The first time I heard it, I was alone in my Texas farmhouse. The silence so thick it pressed against my ears. A low, guttural moan crawled through the walls. Like something alive, trapped in suffering, Clara and I had moved here 6 months ago, leaving Houston's chaos for this creaky 1890s relic on 10 acres of scrubland. The house was a steel-peeling paint, sagging porch, but solid bones, with wide windows and oak floors worn smooth by time. That February night, the air sharp with cold, I knew something was wrong. The moan wasn't the wind. The pecan trees outside stood still under a bloated moon, their shadows etched on the frost-dusted ground. The windows didn't rattle. I lay in bed, heart pounding, staring at the ceiling's cracked plaster. Clara slept beside me, her breath soft, oblivious. The moan came again, deeper, almost human, like a voice choking on pain. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand, its cold metal steadying my shaking hands, and crept downstairs. The oak floors groaned under my bare feet, each step louder than the last in the dead quiet. The beam sliced through the dark, catching dust motes and the warped edges of the living room's oak paneling. The moan faded, replaced by a faint scratching, nails dragging across wood, slow and deliberate. Coming from the kitchen, I froze at the doorway, my pulse hammering in my throat. The kitchen was empty, the linoleum floor gleaming faintly in the moonlight. The scratching grew sharper, insistent, from behind the pantry door. My mouth went dry. I gripped the flashlight tighter, its weight a small anchor, and pulled the door open. Nothing but cans of beans, a sack of flour, and a stale, musty smell. The scratching stopped. I laughed a thin, shaky sound and told myself it was mice. Old houses have mice. I shut the door and shuffled back to bed, but sleep didn't come. The silence felt alive now, watching me, waiting. The next night, it was worse. The moan returned, joined by a rhythmic thump like a heartbeat trapped in the walls. Clara heard it too. She sat up, her brown eyes wide in the dark. "Tom, what the hell is that?" she whispered, her voice tight. I didn't answer, just grabbed the flashlight and headed downstairs. The sound led me to the cellar door in the hallway, a heavy oak slab we'd barely touched since moving in. The cellar was damp, cluttered with junk from the previous owners, rusted tools, broken chairs, boxes of moldy books. The thumping grew louder as I approached, steady, like someone pounding from the other side. I turned the knob, but the door wouldn't budge, like something was holding it shut. Clara appeared behind me, her hand gripping my arm. "Don't," she said, her voice barely audible. I let go of the knob, my heart still racing. Morning came, and we tried to laugh it off over coffee. Clara said it was the house settling, or maybe old pipes. I nodded, but I didn't buy it. The noises didn't sound like creaks or groans of wood. They had intent, like something was trying to speak. I called a plumber, Hank, a gray-bearded man from town with a no-nonsense squint. He spent 3 hours crawling under the house, tapping pipes, checking the furnace. "Nothing wrong," he said, wiping grease on his jeans. "Old places make noises. You'll get used to it." I wanted to believe him, but that night, the moan turned into words. Not clear at first, just a murmur, like someone speaking through water. "Get out," it seemed to say, over and over, from the cellar. Clara heard it too. Her face went pale, and she started packing a bag. "I'm going to my sister's in Austin," she said, zipping her suitcase, "just for a few days." Her eyes said she wasn't coming back soon. I stayed. Maybe I was stubborn, or maybe I needed answers. The house felt different with Clara gone, emptier, but not quieter. The noises grew bolder. The moans came every night, sometimes with that thumping, sometimes with the scratching. I stopped sleeping, kept the TV on low to drown it out, but it didn't help. I'd sit in the living room, a beer in hand, staring at the cellar door. One night, The murmur became clearer, a raspy voice hissing, "Get out, or stay forever." I drank coffee until my hands shook, telling myself I was imagining it. But I wasn't. I bought a crowbar from the hardware store in town. The cellar door gave way with a splintering crack, revealing a black maw of stairs. The air smelled of wet earth and something sour, like spoiled milk. My flashlight barely cut through the gloom as I descended, the steps groaning under my weight. The cellar was a maze of shadows, boxes, old furniture, a rusted bicycle leaning against the wall. The moaning was louder here, echoing off the stone walls. The words unmistakable, "Get out, or stay forever." My stomach churned, but I kept moving, drawn to a corner where the dirt floor looked darker, disturbed. I dropped to my knees and dug with my hands, the earth cold and clammy. My fingers hit something hard, a wooden box, no bigger than a show box. My heart pounded as I pried it open. Inside was a bundle of cloth, stained and brittle, wrapped around bones, small bones. A skull, no bigger than my fist, stared up at me, its eye sockets black voids. The moaning stopped, the air grew thick, pressing against my chest like a physical weight. I stumbled back, the flashlight falling, and in the dark, a whisper brushed my ear. "You found me." I ran, tripping up the stairs, out the door, into my truck. I drove to town, hands shaking on the wheel, and checked into a motel. The fluorescent lights and cheap coffee couldn't erase the image of that skull. I called a local historian, Ruth, who ran the county archive. She knew the house belonged to the Caldwells in the 1920s, she said, her voice crackling over the phone. They had a daughter, Mary, 6 years old, vanished one summer. Folks thought she got lost in the fields, died of heat stroke. The family left soon after. Broke their hearts. I didn't tell Ruth about the box. I couldn't. But I stopped sleeping altogether, haunted by that whisper, those empty eyes. I tried to call Clara, but she wouldn't answer. I couldn't blame her. The house is for sale now, but no one's buying. The neighbors started talking, saying they heard noises from the place at night, moaning, scratching, whispers. They said it wasn't the wind. I didn't tell them what I found or what I heard, but every night, in the motel's thin-walled room, I dreamed of that skull, its sockets staring. And sometimes, when the world was quiet, I heard her whisper again, "Stay forever." Days turned into weeks. The motel became my cage-yellowed wallpaper, a lumpy bed, the hum of a dying air conditioner. I'd lie awake, replaying that night. In the cellar, the weight of that whisper in my ear. I started driving by the house sometimes, just to see it from the road. The windows looked like eyes, dark and unblinking, watching me. I never stopped, never got out. But I couldn't stay away either. I met Ruth at the archive one afternoon, a cramped room stuffed with yellowed papers and the smell of old ink. She showed me a file on the Caldwells' grainy photos, newspaper clippings. Mary's picture hit me like a punch, a small girl with pigtails, smiling shyly in a faded dress. "No one ever found her," Ruth said, her voice soft. "The police searched for weeks. Nothing." I didn't tell her about the box, but her eyes lingered on me, like she knew I was holding something back. I started researching the house myself, digging through old records online. The Caldwells were private, devout, but troubled. Elias Caldwell, the father, was a strict man, rumored to be harsh with his family. There were hints of arguments with neighbors, disputes over land. One article mentioned a storm cellar they'd built themselves, sealed up after Mary's disappearance. My stomach twisted. That had to be at the box, the bones hidden in that soft dirt. I found another record, a brief mention of Elias being questioned about Mary's disappearance. But no charges were filed. The town moved on, but the house didn't. I went to the sheriff's office, a squat building with flickering lights. Sheriff Dawson. A heavy-set man with tired eyes listened to my story about strange noises in the house. I didn't mention the box. He leaned back, chewing. A toothpick. Old houses creak, he said. Folks hear things, especially city types like you. I pressed him about the Caldwells. He frowned, said the case was ancient history, no leads. Let it go, son, he said. I left, feeling like I'd been slapped. The dreams got worse. Mary's skull, those hollow eyes, her whisper weaving through my sleep. I started drinking cheap whiskey from the motel's corner store, but it didn't help. One night, I woke up gasping, sure I'd heard scratching. At the motel door, nothing was there, just the empty parking lot under sodium lights. I checked the locks twice, my hands shaking. Another night, I swore I saw a shadow move across the motel room's window, a small shape, too short to be an adult. I didn't sleep after that. I couldn't avoid the house forever. I needed my tools, my clothes, some piece of my life back. So I went back, broad daylight, the sun beating down. The house looked tired, its paint curling like dead skin. I grabbed my things from the porch, avoiding the cellar door, but as I loaded my truck, I glanced at the upstairs window, Clara's old sewing room. A shadow moved behind the glass, small, like a child. I blinked, and it was gone. My keys slipped from my hand, clattering on the gravel. I didn't pick them up. I just stared, my breath shallow, waiting for it to appear again. It didn't. I drove away, my heart in my throat. That night, I called Clara again. She answered this time, her voice cold. Don't come here, Tom, she said. I can't do this. I tried to explain, but the words stuck, tangled in guilt and fear. She hung up. I sat on the motel bed, staring at the wall, the whiskey bottle empty beside me. The neighbor called again a few days later. Heard it last night, he said, moaning, like someone's hurt. Coming from your place. I mumbled something about checking it out, but I didn't. I couldn't. I knew what was there, what I'd found. Mary, her bones, her voice. The house wasn't empty, it was hers. I started seeing things. Shadows in the motel parking lot, too small to be human. Scratches on my truck's door, thin and deliberate, like fingernails. I stopped going out at night. The motel clerk, a bored kid with acne, noticed my jumpiness. You okay, man? He asked. I didn't answer. How could I? I wasn't okay. I was unraveling, piece by piece, the house pulling me back even as I tried to run. Ruth called me a month later. She'd found something, a letter from Elias Caldwell's sister, written in 1930, years after they'd left. It hinted at abuse, at Elias locking Mary in the cellar for discipline. The sister suspected worse, but had no proof. The letter ended with her plea for forgiveness, for not speaking up sooner. I thanked Ruth, my voice hollow, and hung up. The pieces fit, but they didn't make it easier. Elias had done something to Mary, buried her in that cellar, and the house remembered. I tried to move on, got a job at a warehouse in town, kept my head down, but the house pulled at me. I'd drive by, telling myself I was just checking. The windows stared back, dark and knowing. One night, I parked across the road, watching. The moon was high, casting long shadows. A light flickered in the sewing room window, a faint, yellow glow, like a candle. I hadn't left any lights on. My hands gripped the steering wheel, slick with sweat. The glow moved, drifting to another window, then vanished. I started hearing the whispers outside the house too. At the warehouse, late shifts, I'd hear that raspy voice and the hum of the machinery. Stay forever. I'd drop tools, fumble boxes, my co-workers shooting me looks. I saw her in reflections, not just mirrors, but windows, polished metal, even puddles after rain. A small face, pale, with empty eyes, watching. I stopped looking at reflective surfaces, kept my eyes on the ground. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to the house, not sure why. Maybe I wanted to confront it, to end it. The air was heavy, the sky bruised with clouds. I stood on the porch, the crowbar in my hand, the cellar door looming inside. I didn't go in. Instead, I walked around the house, checking windows, the back door. Everything was locked, just as I'd left it. But as I circled back to the front, I saw it, footprints in the dirt, small, like a child's, leading from the porch to the pecan trees. They stopped, abruptly, like she'd vanished. I went to the church the next day, a small clapboard building on the edge of town. The pastor, an old man with kind eyes, listened as I stumbled through my story. Leaving out the bones, he talked about restless spirits, about pain lingering in places. Some things don't leave, he said. They wait. He gave me a prayer to recite, but it felt hollow in my mouth. I wasn't religious, but I tried it that night, whispering the words in the motel room. The whispers didn't stop. I started talking to Clara's sister Ellen, hoping she'd know where Clara was. Ellen was kind but firm. "She's not coming back, Tom," she said. "She's scared. Said you changed after the house." I didn't argue. I had changed. I wasn't the man Clara married, not anymore. The house had taken that from me, just like it took Mary. Months passed. I moved to a new motel, farther from town, hoping distance would help. It didn't. The whispers followed, quieter but always there. I saw scratches on my new apartment door one morning, thin and deliberate, like the ones on my truck. I started carrying a knife, not that it would help. I stopped driving by the house, but I could feel it, like a weight in my chest, pulling me back. Ruth called again, her voice urgent. She'd found another record, a journal from a neighbor of the Caldwells, dated 1928. It described strange noises from the farmhouse, moans, scratches, whispers. The neighbor wrote about Elias, how he'd changed after Mary's birth, how he'd grown cold, angry. The journal mentioned the cellar, how Elias spent hours there, alone, after Mary vanished. The neighbor suspected he'd buried something, but no one listened. The journal ended with a warning: that house holds on to pain. I knew I had to go back, not to live, not to stay, but to end it. I bought salt, holy water, anything I could find from old folklore. I drove to the house. At dusk, the sky bleeding red. The air was heavy, the pecan trees casting long, twisted shadows. I walked to the cellar, the crowbar in one hand, a bag of salt in the other. The door was open, just a crack, like it was waiting. I pushed it wide, the hinges screaming. The air was thicker now, the sour smell stronger. I descended, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. The box was still there, in the corner, the dirt disturbed again, like someone had been digging. I poured salt around it, sprinkled holy water, recited the pastor's prayer. The air grew colder, the whispers louder, not just Mary's voice now but others, overlapping, angry, "Stay forever." They hissed, the words wrapping around me. Like smoke, I grabbed the box, ran upstairs, and threw it into a metal barrel in the yard. I doused it with gasoline, lit a match. The flames roared, the cloth and bones blackening. The whispers turned to screams, high and piercing, then faded to nothing. I thought it was over. I drove back to the motel, exhausted, the smell of smoke clinging to me. But that night, the dreams came back. Mary's skull, her empty eyes, her voice clearer than ever. "You can't leave." I woke up to scratches on my arms, thin red lines I couldn't explain. I checked the motel door, more scratches, fresh like she'd followed me. The house is still for sale. No one's touched it. The neighbors hear things, moans, scratches, whispers. They say it's not the wind. I don't tell them about the box, the bones, the fire. I don't tell them about the shadows I see, the small figure in reflections, the whispers in my ear. I've moved again, to a city far away, but it doesn't matter. She's with me every night. In the quiet, I hear her, "Stay forever." And when I look in the mirror, I see her behind me, her small skull gleaming, her empty eyes waiting for me.